I guess that's a good point to segue into our next conversation as well, right there on load shedding and crime, how it's affected various parts of the country and the economy. Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi says his administration is well on its way to meet its employment targets. He says more job opportunities will be announced during the State of the Province address on Monday at the Newzroom Expo Center in Johannesburg. Meanwhile, Economic Development MEC Tasneem Motara hosted stakeholders to discuss Gauteng's governance and socio-economic landscape. The MEC joins us now in studio for more on that and the plans for the province. MEC, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Thabo.
So, I mean, if you have a look at the third quarter numbers, they'll tell you 2.6 million Gauteng citizens are without jobs. 611,000 of them are discouraged to even look for work. So that's a 33.7 percentage that you're looking at. Your job, of course, amongst other things that you do, is to create a conducive environment for private sector to invest in the province and create employment. Speaking recently at the National Automobile Manufacturers Gathering, I think that's what you were saying. You said government is making progress. However, to meet its aim, more private sector partnerships are required, which are seen as critical. We wish to build on greater partnerships with private sector, civil society, universities, research institutions, and innovation centers to maximize the potential of future generation. But I just want to zero in on that more needs to be done. Does that sum up the sense of what you're feeling with the number? I mean, I can list them, the things that you have done. 400 million to support SMMEs, tax economic zones that have been done, loans of up to 50 million that you have given out, 3,000 stores that have been refurbished, 2 distribution centers that have been built, the last mile project, you name them. You've only managed to create 23,000 jobs. 2.6 million jobs that you need to create, it doesn't even begin to touch the surface.
No, definitely. So thanks so much. Look, that's what government can account for as direct. And of course, like you touched on in your opening, our responsibility is to create a conducive environment for investment from the private sector to be able to come land investment in our province. Of course, the automotive sector still is growing, but I think the reality is that it's not giving us the jobs that it wants. We're in good conversation. We have good relationships with OEMs. Ford has announced, and we're going to spell out those details of their current expansion over and above what they've already put on the ground in Tshwane. The Minister of Ms. Togo Didiza yesterday put out the Gazette for the Vaal area, just for public consultation. Part of that, of course, is going to cross Gauteng into the Free State, but looking at the Vaal region, the special development plan. Anchored within that is the Gauteng's plan to build the special economic zone in the Vaal. We're quite close to designation, and that's going to see close to about 3 billion rand immediately invested by the private sector. So we're not accounting for those jobs because we just create the environment. Yes, we make sure that we answer all the questions from the private sector. What are their fears? What are their challenges? Where are government's plans? Share those with them. Work them out together so that they're confident that, yes, we can. I mean, we've also really assisted the business processing sector, which is your call centers, for example, to be able to back them as they go and bid for more business here. And I think we're doing quite a lot. Of course, the unemployment figures in Gauteng specifically is a moving target. We have new entrants into Gauteng year on year, day after day, looking for employment here. So that target moves, and I think what we're doing is definitely, it's a lot. We're calling on definitely everybody who can still contribute to do that. And buy into our vision, which is to really see access to opportunities for those living in townships, informal settlements and hostels.
Yeah. How much is what the President highlighted there putting a spanner in the works for you? Load shedding and crime.
Those are top two for us. Gauteng on its own contributes 34% to the total GDP of the country. We are the 7th largest economy on the continent. So we could be a standalone country if you look at those absolute figures. But the reality is somebody who needs to manufacture, 12 hours in a day is hit quite badly. The stage 6 load shedding. Their production time is cut down considerably. Crime, definitely, and I think the Premier, even yesterday, launching and installing the cameras across, just the amount of money, the investment that we're making directly as a province to be able to respond not only to crime but also load shedding, is testament to the fact that we've got to do something extraordinary as provincial government to be able to respond. Our response to the load shedding, yes, it's not in the immediate cushioning the business sector. It's definitely responding to residents at homes in the communities where they don't have electricity, because we're paying for the replacement of transformers. And I think we must never minimize the effect that has. People work away from home, they go home, at least they need to have electricity to be able to do everything else. But I'm sure that within the next few days we'll also hear what are our additional plans to be able to respond directly as a province, again, to crime, increasing what we've been able to do. And what we've been able to do is add human resource capacity, but also technology. You need more boots on the ground. You need to be able to, as a complete component, the criminal justice system, also to be able to respond to crime. But also we've got to get citizens to be active in their communities, because the more active you are in the community, the more you are the eyes and ears in the community, coupled with that technology, that human resource that we've put on the ground, we also turn communities to be safer.
Yeah, I'm getting pushback. I mean, you're pinning a lot of what you're trying to create here in terms of investment on the automotive sector. One immediately looks at that and says, one is the energy thing, definitely, and you were talking about that. But two, the ports.
Yes.
If that is not working, that strategy is going to fall flat.
No, definitely. And I think we've had big fights with the port authorities, simply because, whatever is manufactured in Gauteng, especially from the automotive sector, is for the export market. Their ability to move goods and people over and above the fact that they are constrained and had constraints with load shedding also adds to those capacity challenges. I'm glad now that at least there has been work done to be able to get the private sector involved. I think that even our engagements, just adding pressure, I'm hopeful, and I think I'm confident that that will be resolved, because the private sector is going to come. I mean, it's done all over in developed countries where the private sector actually manages and runs ports, and does so very successfully. If the reality is, if you don't have the capacity in-house, look for that capacity elsewhere where there are specialists to be able to do that work. Of course, we boast the dry ports in Gauteng, so you're still able to move the smaller goods by air freight, and of course, again, moving people, moving goods as speedily as possible to and from their destinations of origin to consumers is very important. Yeah. So that we ensure that they run smoothly, like clockwork. We plan ahead for things like maintenance. You have to plan ahead for expansion. You have to plan ahead for possible investors that you want to attract. Because an investor takes time to make decisions, but when they make decisions, they must be able to have a smooth landing when they've decided, yes, this is where we're going to go. So I'm confident that the private sector is going to actually come in quite aggressively, play in that space, and will have the ports up and running. I can only imagine the negative impact it's having on our sister provinces like Eastern Cape, for example, also sharing in the space of automotive, and even KZN sharing in the space of automotive manufacturing. But for us, I think, like I said, Ford has announced their expansion over and above what they've already put on the ground in the Tshwane Special Economic Zone. We're manufacturing. It's not assembly. It's manufacturing with OEMs, 11 of them, component manufacturers. From a beginning to the end, it's for the export market. But we need to be able to adequately respond, government as a whole, to be able to make sure that we maintain that investment, but also grow it and expand it. So
let's look at the other areas where you are looking, for example, at putting some money, and that is the aerospace area, and some work being done, for example, in Lanseria, the Gauteng Management Agency. They're putting some 9.5 billion rands for expansion of that Lanseria network. What has that brought onto the table in terms of investment?
So that is, currently we already have 9 investors that are interested. Of course, it's anchored by government support to the private sector. So many of the landowners there are private landowners, but we had to come on board to be able to assist with all sorts of regulatory issues, all sorts of things that needed the municipality and ourselves as provincial government to be able to assist and support. Again, the expansion, I think, if you look at how Gauteng is growing population-wise, not space-wise, of course it can't, but the need to have a second and even a third airport that can, cushion and support OR Tambo, which is the largest on the continent. But that has really pulled and attracted huge interest, like I said, and we're in the process now of appointing a transaction advisor. Just to package everything, we're going to go to the capital markets also to be able to attract additional investment and support the growth of also what the President spoke about, the new post-apartheid city, which is the Lanseria Smart City. That's what we think that what we definitely can contribute as Gauteng towards that. Smart city, it's connectivity, it's how people and goods are connected, but how in a very concentrated space you can work, play, live, recreation. You can be productive, but also you have that community and that new post-apartheid city. Of course, there's been development of other cities and city spaces within our city post-apartheid, but the Lanseria is going to be the smart city, and essentially that's what's going to give us that competitive edge that we think.
And realistically, what are you targeting there, directly or indirectly, in terms of jobs?
Sure. We haven't really quantified it. I think depending on the types of investment that we get, depending on the nature of what it's going to look like. I think once the transaction advisor is on board and begins to package that, we'll be able to, of course, there's going to be jobs created in the entire value chain. Speaking about construction, and then indirect jobs to construction. It's materials, it's services that support construction. And then post that, government's got to come in with the social services, schools, clinics, the like. And then the expansion of Lanseria itself. But I wouldn't want to thumbsuck at this point. We can definitely have a conversation later when the transaction advisor is on board, giving us real figures, so that also when we speak to investors, we're not changing the figures that we're throwing out.
The Gauteng Economic Development MEC Tasneem Motara is still with us, and we are talking the development of the economy, or at least the revival of the economy and repositioning Gauteng as an industrial hub through the automotive sector in particular, but there are other areas as well that we've been looking at. So the criticism from the Democratic Alliance is that with the 611 or so discouraged job seekers in the province, to encourage investment, you need to get rid of red tape. They still believe that you have not done sufficiently in getting rid of that red tape.
So, of course, the opposition parties, Democratic Alliance, their responsibility is really to criticize, even when data is there, even when you can demonstrate clearly how you've, for instance, reduced the amount of time it takes to make decisions on certain key aspects. We're leading in Gauteng, so a simple thing, simply, I mustn't call it a simple thing because it's not a simple thing, but an EIA, which is required for environmental impact assessment. It used to take anywhere between, 18 to 2 years. It now takes 30 days. And, those are things that we can speak about. How we work very closely with municipalities in a cooperative manner for them to be able to deal with things like business zoning, for them to be able to deal with things like land consolidation, which usually would have taken a long period of time. I mean, we've been able to put that work together for 3-4 of our SEZs, ourselves working with the municipalities, private sector as well. Of course, what doesn't help and what could add to this, what they refer to as red tape, is the instability of municipalities. That has negatively contributed. And I think, the instability in municipalities, we don't speak about it enough, but it is one of the biggest challenges that we have in Gauteng as opposed to other provinces. We experience it more, and decision-making gets stalled. You're not sure of developmental agendas of municipalities because of the constant change in leadership. I mean, if you look at Tshwane in the period of less than 10 years, how many mayors have they had? Just the chopping and changing. And I think that has got very little to do with the African National Congress, because we've been out of power in the city of Tshwane. But the fact that instability feeds into its inability of municipalities. And municipalities play a very critical role in making sure that our development goes ahead. I think other areas where we'll see a lot of improvement, I think also even the President has spoken about that, the Minister, Arun Mutoledi, has spoken about that, the visa regime. Because, you want investments. Sometimes it's international companies that come with the actual technology, with the actual knowledge of the technology. They have to bring the expertise. Of course, they bring the expertise with the intention of transfer. But our visa regime is not conducive for them to come for a long period of time. So they're back and forth. Things like that also are very key aspects of what makes an investor make a decision of where to invest. And I just think that, so we're working with national government, and like I said, there's been announcements and we'll see improvement there. But we in the province, as far as what we are responsible for, we've been able to address just things like backlogs, the time it takes to make certain decisions that are within our purview. I mean, we're one of the provinces that pay invoices within 15 days. My department, as an example, pays invoices within 15 days. We no longer meet the 30-day requirement. So just things like that, which are us even pushing ourselves to do better. If you can pay an invoice within 30 days, why not 15 days? It helps small businesses. If you can do an EIA in 18 months, why not 12 months? Why not 6 months? It's now 30 days. So those are the things that we do to be able to push ourselves further and go forward.
Yeah. The GP and IDC 400 million, I'm sure if we were to open the lines, entrepreneurs, SMEs would tell us how difficult it is to get that amount of money. How much of it have you been able to distribute?
So currently, it's a new fund. So I think we've been able to disperse just probably under about 10% now. But I think it's a very new fund. But what we've been able to demonstrate is that we don't have to fund everything ourselves. So we've taken just a portion. It's a co-fund. Ourselves and IDC, we sit together to be able to adjudicate. Going into the next financial year, we'll definitely we plan to spend all of it and even increase that fund. We also used it as an opportunity to demonstrate to our own treasury what we can do through leveraging and partnerships, how we spend it, and then go to our own treasury to be able to back us up with additional. So we're looking at ramping it up to about 1 billion rand. That is our intention. So the 400 million definitely come the new financial year, I'm sure within 2 to 3 months that money would be dispersed.
And what projects are you looking to fund?
So in line with our revitalization and reindustrialization program, it's manufacturing. We're looking at manufacturing in townships. So I think, you've got to look at businesses at scale. So while it may be a 10% disbursements, we would have supported maybe 3,000 businesses because they're really small. They're SMMEs, they're in townships, they're manufacturing. We're also looking at those that are in the retail space. So how do we improve and support them? And then ICT businesses, and I think just looking at the transport and logistics space as well. Again, if you're manufacturing and you're manufacturing a lot of products, especially in the township, you've got to get those products out of the township to consumers to also make those businesses competitive. But like I said, they're large numbers of businesses, but the input that they need may be very, very small.
How are you managing the collateral question? I mean, especially if you're looking at Gauteng and you want young people to be able to have access to that fund. I know with the Lanseria project, you're saying 1 billion went to women-owned construction companies. How are you incorporating that aspect of it into getting a hold of that fund?
So for us, that's a non-negotiable. And in fact, we've put together a separate fund together with the NYDA just for youth. So we, as the Enterprise Propeller or Department of Economic Development, don't have a fund specific for youth. But we had to go and look that at least we can ring-fence money. So we do have a separate fund for youth with the NYDA. So it's augmenting. And I think What helps is, so an entity like NYDA, IDC, all of those are national entities. They get, inquiries, applications nationally. But we've been able to, through this model, at least ring-fence a portion of their funds just for Gauteng, over and above the others that they will get from Gauteng directly, not through this fund. And so that has helped us leverage just for us. Of course, we still, the 35%, whether it's procurement, whether it's funding, must go to youth-owned businesses. So we're still there. But because Gauteng is a youthful province, we do see majority of the applications coming through are from those 35 and below.
Right. The township economy, I mean, it's a big thing. I know we had the Pakistan the other day to come speak to us especially about that, the township economy, and you came up with something called the Gauteng Township Economic Development Agency, or TEDA. What exactly is it doing?
So the TEDA is an act, so it's legislation. So in essence, we looked at, so there was a study done just to quantify the economy of the township, and I think at the time it was a few billion rand. And at the time, there was even the idea of a second stock exchange just for township businesses was mooted. In essence, what the TEDA does, it's a piece of legislation that allows us to zone specific areas in townships as economic hubs in the township. And then we deal with the issue around red tape. So we sort of cut out the municipality. The province is able to allocate these areas, and then what we do is provide additional support. So if you think about an old sort of CBD model, creating many CBDs in townships. So we've already designated 52 of these zones across the province. We're dealing with amendments to the legislation so that we can just do them at once. And that will allow us to support directly in a municipal space without having to go through the long route otherwise you would otherwise have required with the municipality, like zoning, rezoning, which can, depending on the municipality, its own dynamics, its challenges, and its stability, could take quite a long period of time. So that's what we're doing. So there'll be 52 of these. Yeah. Again, attracting
so if
investment.
I understand correctly, you're saying so there'll these be like places where within the township people can go there, do their shopping.
Yes, business zones.
Business zones, yeah.
And you're looking at even private sector investing in them. So, for example, we have a call center at Jabulani Mall. It's a private business. They are in the business of call centers. They've established, they bought into the idea of township informal settlements and hostels and said, okay, look, let's put up one call center for one of our clients in Soweto. They have at Jabulani Mall. They're now looking at that model. They're now looking to establish one in Alexander. What does that do to the employees? You're no longer spending so much of time going to and from work, less time, less money in just traveling. But also you're bringing back that ability to build communities because you have more time to spend dropping kids off at school, picking them up, and the like. So we're putting money back into the hands of employees. And I think that's why we want to be able to establish these economic zones in townships so that you attract the labor from the zone, from the townships. They spend less, but also they have money in their pockets to be able to be active consumers in the economy. But it attracts business to set up there because there's government support that will back it.
Yeah. Are you beginning to reap the rewards of investing in the taxi industry, the taxi hubs?
Yes, definitely. So, look, I think the concept came from the taxi industry themselves. By its very nature, taxi ranks are centers of economic activity. And again, looking at that study that looked at what is the township economy, let's explain it. What happens there? Who are the players? Who are the sectors? The taxi industry is a big industry and a big component of the township economy. So it was actually brought to us by them to say, let's turn these into, we've got these spaces that we understand what are the opportunities there. let's commercialize them, let's support them. This is the kind of support we need from government, and they would have spelled them out. So we have 3 in Tshwane that are fully operational, Mamelodi, Soshanguve, and Stinkwater, fully operational, and the model works beautifully. So it's vehicle repair, it's fuel service, everything to do with the taxi itself, and then related services for consumers and those who are commuting on the taxis daily.
All right. MEC, thank you very much for coming in and outlining some of your plans with us tonight here on In Focus. That's the MEC for Economic Development in Gauteng.